The apartment at 1847 Industrial Avenue was small enough to fit inside the master bathroom of the last house Leland Mockridge had built. He was 73 years old, a master carpenter with 57 years of experience and 517 homes documented in a notebook he had kept since 1972. And for 31 of those years, he had lived in 487 square feet of cinder block and linoleum because his sister had needed a house in 1986, and his brother had needed one in 1991, and his mother had needed somewhere to live, and his nieces had needed college, and his grandnieces needed school right now. And so he ate scrambled eggs for dinner and watched a television, older than most of his apprentices, and never once built anything for himself. What happened after a biker named Darnell Washington noticed the old man correcting his electrical work during a charity renovation and learned why a master craftsman who had built millions in property value lived in the cheapest apartment in town after 63 Brotherhood members and 27 union carpenters and a community that remembered who had built their homes decided to build house number 518 on Willow Creek Drive, proved that the people who construct our world deserve to live in it. That sacrifice should eventually be answered, and that it is never too late to teach a builder what it feels like to be built for. The apartment at 1847 Industrial Avenue was small enough to fit inside the master bathroom of the last house Leland Mockridge had built. He was 73 years old, a master carpenter who had been swinging hammers since he was 16, and the apartment was exactly 487 square feet of linoleum and cinder block that he had called home for the past 31 years. One bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchen that was really just a corner with appliances, a window that looked out onto the parking lot of a tire shop. But the rent was $605 a month, utilities included, and that was what mattered. Leland sat at his small kitchen table on a Tuesday evening in November, eating a dinner of scrambled eggs and toast, the same meal he had eaten most nights for the past decade. His hands, gnarled and scarred from 57 years of construction work, moved slowly now. Arthritis had settled into his knuckles like unwanted tenants. His shoulders ached from decades of carrying lumber. His knees had been replaced twice, but he still worked. 3 days a week at Harrison Brothers Construction, teaching the young guys how to do finish carpentry the way it was supposed to be done. The way he had learned it from his father, who had learned it from his father, who had come up from Mississippi in 1919 with nothing but a tool belt and a work ethic that refused to die. 517 homes. That was the count Leland kept in a notebook he had maintained since 1972. Every house he had ever worked on, listed by address, year, and what he had contributed. Framing, roofing, finish work, custom, cabinets. Some he had built from foundation to roof. Others he had touched for just a few days. But all of them were in the book. 517 homes for other people, none for himself. Darnell Washington was 46 years old, a union electrician who had been riding with the Brotherhood of Steel MC for 14 years. He had come to 1847 Industrial Avenue because his club was doing a charity renovation on the building, a 20-unit complex that housed mostly elderly residents on fixed incomes. The landlord had agreed to let the Brotherhood update the electrical systems for free, a weekend project that would prevent the kind of fires that happen too often in buildings this old. Darnell was running wire in the hallway of the second floor when he noticed the old man watching him. The man stood in the doorway of apartment 2C, leaning on the frame, studying Darnell's work with the critical eye of someone who knew exactly what he was looking at. "You're running that wire." "Wrong," the old man said. Darnell paused, looking back at the junction box he was installing. "Wrong how?" "You've got your neutrals too close to the hot leads. Code says 4 inches minimum separation in a junction that size. You've got maybe 2. Darnell looked again. The old man was right. You know electrical? I know everything, the old man said. 57 years in construction. Started framing. Ended up doing a little of whatever needed doing. Electrical. Plumbing. HVAC. If it goes in a house, I've installed it. Darnell climbed down from his ladder and extended his hand. Darnell Washington, Brotherhood of Steel MC. We're doing the electrical upgrade for the building. The old man shook his hand. His grip was weaker than it had probably once been. But Darnell could feel the calluses, the permanent texture of a lifetime of physical labor. Leland Mockridge, the old man said. Apartment 2C. You need help, I'm available. Hands don't work like they used to, but I can supervise. Hit subscribe if you believe that the people who build our world deserve to be seen. Comment the name of your city. And share this with someone who needs to know that sacrifice doesn't always come with recognition. Darnell took Leland up on his offer. Over the next 3 days, the old carpenter became an unofficial consultant on the renovation project, pointing out code violations the younger workers had missed, suggesting more efficient routing for the new wiring, and sharing stories about buildings he had worked on that made the Brotherhood members laugh and shake their heads. On the second evening, Darnell found himself sitting on an overturned bucket in the hallway, sharing a sandwich with Leland, while the other workers took a dinner break. So you've been doing construction for 57 years, Darnell said. You must have built some amazing houses. Leland nodded slowly. 517? I keep a notebook. 517 houses. Darnell let out a low whistle. That's incredible. So which one is yours? You build your own place. Leland's face did something complicated, a flicker of emotion that passed too quickly for Darnell to read. Never did, Leland said. Been living right here in 2C for 31 years. Darnell looked at the door, to Leland's apartment, at the worn carpet and the flickering hallway light, and the water stain on the ceiling that the renovation would hopefully address. Wait, he said. You've built 500 houses, and you live in a 500 square foot apartment. 487, Leland corrected. And yes. Why? Leland was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made Darnell's sandwich stop halfway to his mouth. Because my sister needed a house more than I did, and my brother needed one after that, and my mama needed somewhere to live after Daddy died, and my nieces needed college more than I needed equity. He looked at Darnell with eyes that held no self-pity, only the bone-deep weariness of a man who had carried others his entire life. You build enough houses, he said. You learn that home isn't about square footage. It's about who you're building it for. Darnell could not stop thinking about what Leland had said. That night, after the work was finished and the Brotherhood had packed up their tools, he sat on his motorcycle in the parking lot of 1847 Industrial Avenue, staring up at the second-floor window of apartment 2C. 517 homes, a lifetime of skill and labor, enough to make a man wealthy in another profession, poured into houses for other people, while Leland lived in the smallest, cheapest apartment Darnell had ever seen. He pulled out his phone and called his club president. Roland Achebe had been leading the Brotherhood of Steel for 11 years, a former Army engineer who had built the club around the principles of service, craft, and community. When Darnell explained what he had learned about Leland Mockridge, Roland was quiet for a long moment. You're telling me this man built over 500 houses and lives in a studio apartment? 487 square feet, Darnell confirmed. 31 years in the same place. He gave everything to his family. Built his sister a house. Built his brother a house. Put his nieces through college. Took care of his mother until she died. And now. Now he's 73, works 3 days a week teaching kids how to swing a hammer, and eats scrambled eggs for dinner because he's still sending money to his grandnieces. Roland was quiet again. Then he said, "What do you need?" Darnell looked up at the window again. "I need to build this man a house. If you're enjoying this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes a second, and helps this video reach more people who need to see it." Now back to the story. The Brotherhood of Steel did not do things halfway. Within a week, Roland had assembled a coalition that would have impressed a general. The Brotherhood's 63 members represented nearly every building trade, electricians and plumbers, and HVAC technicians and roofers who had all, at one point or another, worked alongside carpenters like Leland on job sites across the state. But they needed more. They needed land. They needed materials. They needed permits and plans and the thousand small things that turned an idea into an actual structure. Roland made phone calls. Then he made more phone calls. Then he showed up in person at offices and lumber yards and city halls, wearing his leather vest and his military bearing, and the quiet authority of a man who would not take no for an answer. Harrison Brothers Construction, the company Leland had worked for since 1989, donated $50,000 in materials when they heard what the Brotherhood was planning. Their owner, a man named Theodore Harrison, whose father had hired Leland 43 years ago, said it was the least they could do for a man who had made them millions. The local carpenters union contributed labor. 27 journeymen and apprentices volunteered their weekends for as long as it took. The city fast-tracked the permits. The planning commissioner, it turned out, lived in a house that Leland had built in 1997. He remembered the old carpenter who had custom-built his daughter's bedroom closet with hidden compartments for her stuffed animals. A woman named Valerie Okonkwo, whose family had bought a lot 2 years ago, with plans to build that had fallen through, donated the land when she heard the story. Her grandfather had been a carpenter in Nigeria. She said Leland reminded her of him. By December, the Brotherhood had everything they needed. Everything except Leland's permission. Darnell went back to 1847 Industrial Avenue on a cold evening 2 weeks before Christmas. He found Leland in his usual spot, sitting at the small kitchen table, eating scrambled eggs, watching a small television that was older than some of the apprentices at Harrison Brothers. "Mr. Mockridge," Darnell said, standing in the doorway, "we need to talk." Leland gestured to the only other chair in the apartment. "What's on your mind?" Darnell sat down. He had prepared a speech, but now, looking at the humble space where this master craftsman had lived for 3 decades, the words seemed inadequate. "I've been doing some research," Darnell said, "talking to people. Your sister Claudette lives in a 3-bedroom house on Magnolia Street. You built it for her in 1986. Leland's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've been busy. Your brother Everett lives in a 4-bedroom on the other side of town. You built that one in 1991. Your mother lived in a cottage you built behind Claudette's house until she passed in 2008. Your nieces, both of them, went to college on money you saved instead of buying property. Your grandnieces are in school right now and you're still helping." Leland said nothing. His eggs were getting cold. "You've given everything," Darnell continued. "Everything you ever earned, everything you ever built, went to other people. And I'm not saying that's wrong. But Mr. Mockridge, you're 73 years old. You've built 500 houses, and you're living in a box." "It's not a box," Leland said quietly. "It's home. It's 487 square feet of cinder block and regret. And you deserve better." Leland's jaw tightened. "I don't need charity." "This isn't charity," Darnell said. "This is a bunch of tradespeople who heard about a master carpenter who spent his whole life building for others. And we want to build something for you. The way you would have built it. The way you taught everyone else to build. He leaned forward. We've got the land. We've got the materials. We've got 100 people ready to swing hammers. All we need is your permission to break ground. Leland stared at him. The eggs sat untouched. The television murmured in the corner. Outside, the tire shop parking lot was quiet and dark. Why? Leland asked finally. Why would you do this for a man you just met? Because you're not just a man I just met, Darnell said. You're every man who ever built something beautiful and never got to live in it. You're every tradesperson who gave their body to this work and retired with nothing but arthritis and stories. You're every father and uncle and brother who put family first and self last. He put his hand on the table, close to Leland's gnarled fingers. And because my grandfather was a bricklayer for 40 years, Darnell said, his voice catching. He built half the buildings in our neighborhood. He died in a nursing home we could barely afford. I never got to give him what you're giving me a chance to give you. The apartment was very quiet. When Leland finally spoke, his voice was rough with something that might have been tears. You really think you can build a house? Darnell smiled. Mr. Mockridge, we've got electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs, roofers, framers, and a whole carpenters union ready to learn from the best. We're not going to build a house. He stood up and offered his hand. We're going to build your house, and you're going to supervise every nail. If Bike Diaries has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. And hit that hype button if you haven't already. Now back to the story. They broke ground on January 4th. The lot on Willow Creek Drive was 1/3 of an acre, enough for a modest house and a workshop that Leland had never asked for, but Darnell had insisted upon. A carpenter without a workshop, Darnell had said, is like a biker without a garage. The weather was cold, but the volunteers were warm. On that first Saturday, 47 people showed up to pour the foundation. Brotherhood members in their leather vests worked alongside union carpenters in their work jackets, alongside neighbors who had heard the story and wanted to be part of it. Leland sat in a lawn chair with a thermos of coffee, wrapped in a blanket, watching the work with eyes that missed nothing. You're going to want to adjust that form on the south corner, he called out. Grade's off by about 2 inches. Water will pool if you don't fix it now. The workers fixed it. They would fix everything Leland pointed out, because they were not just building a house. They were building a testament to a lifetime of expertise. And they would not shame that legacy with sloppy work. The frame went up in February. 23 Brotherhood members and 15 union carpenters worked 4 weekends straight, raising walls that Leland had sketched on a napkin over dinner at Darnell's house. 3 bedrooms, Leland had said, when asked what he wanted. 1 for me. 1 for when the nieces visit. 1 that can be an office, maybe. And a porch. I always wanted a porch where I could sit and watch the sunset. The porch was the first thing they built after the frame. A wraparound that faced west, exactly as Leland had described. Spring came, and with it, the interior work. This was where Leland's expertise became invaluable. He could no longer swing a hammer for 8 hours straight, but he could guide hands that could. He taught the Brotherhood's younger members how to do finish carpentry, the art of making joints disappear, of fitting trim so perfectly that it looked like the house had grown that way naturally. He taught them about custom cabinetry, the way he had learned it from his father. Dovetail joints, soft, close hinges, the small details that separated craftsmanship from mere construction. He taught them about the soul of a house, the idea that a building was not just materials, but intention. Every board you nail, every wire you run, every pipe you solder, he said, becomes part of where someone lives, part of where they raise their kids and grow old and die. You're not building a structure. You're building a life. The volunteers listened. They learned. And slowly, weekend by weekend, the house took shape. By June, it was finished. The ribbon-cutting ceremony happened on a Saturday afternoon, with over 200 people gathered on Willow Creek Drive. Theodore Harrison was there, representing the company that had donated materials. The mayor was there, because the story had spread, and politicians love good press. The Carpenters Union president was there, along with dozens of members who had worked on the project. But mostly, family was there. Claudette, Leland's sister, the one he had built a house for in 1986. Everett, his brother, who had received his house in 1991. The nieces, now in their 40s, both successful professionals, who traced their careers back to an uncle who had paid for their educations. The grandnieces, teenagers now, who had heard stories about Uncle Leland their whole lives but never fully understood what he had sacrificed. Darnell stood at the front of the crowd, next to Roland and the other Brotherhood officers. They had traded their work clothes for clean vests and pressed shirts, the formal wear of a motorcycle club, on a ceremonial occasion. "Mr. Mockridge," Darnell said into a microphone, "you've spent 57 years building for other people. You've built 517 homes, and you've lived in an apartment smaller than most people's closets. You've given everything to your family and asked for nothing in return." He paused, letting the emotions settle. "Today, we're giving something back. Not charity, not pity. Just recognition. A thank you from everyone who's ever swung a hammer and understood what it means to build something with your hands." He turned and gestured to the house behind him. "This is yours, Mr. Mockridge, built by your brothers and sisters in the trades. Built the way you taught us. Built with love." The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. The mayor said something about community and service. But Darnell was watching Leland. The old carpenter stood at the front of the crowd, tears streaming down his weathered face, looking at the house that bore his fingerprints on every surface. The porch he had dreamed about. The workshop he had never dared ask for. The 3 bedrooms, one for him, one for visitors, one for an office where he could finally write down all the things he had learned in 57 years. Darnell walked over and put a hand on Leland's shoulder. "What do you think?" Leland was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that made Darnell's eyes sting. He said, "In 57 years, I never once built something for myself. Always for other people. Always thinking there'd be time later. And now." He looked at Darnell with eyes that held a lifetime of labor and love and sacrifice. "Now I know what it feels like," Leland said, "to walk through a door that's yours. To stand in a kitchen where you're going to cook your own meals. To sit on a porch and watch the sunset and know that you're home." He turned back to the house. "This is what it feels like to be built for," he said quietly. "Never knew." Thank you for watching this story about a master carpenter who built 517 homes for other people and never built one for himself, and the biker who asked why and refused to accept the answer. It was inspired by the millions of tradespeople who spend their lives building dreams for others while putting their own on hold. If you know a tradesperson who has sacrificed for family, who has built and fixed and created for decades while living modestly, tell them they matter. Their work is the foundation of everything we take for granted. They deserve to be seen. Habitat for Humanity honors tradespeople while building homes for those in need. Local unions often have charitable funds for members facing hardship. Sometimes the best resource is simply a community that decides to give back. Subscribe to Bike Diaries. Hit that hype button to boost this video. And if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Share this with everyone who needs To remember that the people who build our world deserve to live in it, that sacrifice should not go unnoticed forever, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give a builder is building something for them. Leland Mockridge is 75 now. He lives in the house on Willow Creek Drive, the first home he has ever owned. He sits on the wraparound porch every evening, watching the sunset, still not quite believing it is real. His notebook now has a final entry: House 518, Willow Creek Drive, built by brothers. Darnell Washington is 48. He still rides with the Brotherhood of Steel, still works as a union electrician, still visits Leland every few weeks to check on him and hear stories about houses built in decades past. He says Leland taught him more about craftsmanship in 6 months than he learned in 20 years of trade work. The Brotherhood of Steel started a program called Builders Building Back, renovating and constructing homes for retired tradespeople who gave their careers to the craft. They have completed 4 houses so far. Leland consults on everyone. 518 homes now, but only one that matters to Leland. The one where he finally got to be the owner instead of the builder. The one where he learned what it feels like to be built for. The one that taught a 73-year-old master carpenter that it's never too late to come home.